Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Capucine.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for asking. We are back with our book club, and we took another really long break.
But it was it was needed. Life hit me hard. When was the last time? I feel like maybe it was like more than 6 months ago. I want to say, yeah, but
Oh,
no, life was painful for me. So it did actually take me a very long time to complete reading Ishmael. So yes, we took a long break, but now we're back.
and you don't have to say any of those things, like this is a tough book, and I'm pretty sure everything was divinely timed and it was exactly what was needed. I jumped into the book and read half of it like a bullet, like super fast because I was so transfixed. And then I took a break, and it took me like months to come back to finish it because yeah, it's a bit intense and it's so worth it and it was so good, but it also took me time because you kind of have to be in a strong mood to go through it because it's a little bit of a slap in the face.
Yeah, no, it was definitely like that for me, the slap in the face. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was like I would be reading it and then I would look at my life. I'd be like, this is the exact reason why I'm like not doing so well right now. So yeah, it was like in tandem with what I was going through. Yeah. Sade Sati is hard sometimes. So yeah.
And what is I think what really hit me is that the book was published in 1977 and it was super successful. So everybody heard that message, and we're in 2024. So if you
Yeah.
think that one day, if you think of the right words and you share the right words and they're being listened to, that something would change about our communication, connection in humanity, and our connection with the earth, our responsibility of it, and kind of really hit me hard when I was like, oh my God, this book is whole old and had an impact, but I don't really see the consequences. So that was another thing, like a hard pill to swallow, to be like, okay, what do we do then if this doesn't work? Like, oh, anyway, I just, it
No,
was,
that's a very good point because I mean, I'll start talking a bit about the book now. But you know how you said like it was published, so it's basically more than 50 years ago that this was published, or close to 50 years ago that this was published. And nothing, it kind of seems like whatever was said in here is so relevant to what we're going through today. And in the book, so like the protagonist, he's in search of this knowledge, and towards the end, like what happens, Ishmael actually turns out he has pneumonia, and he dies from the pneumonia. But this whole time the protagonist didn't realize it, and like he wants to be better. He's in search of that knowledge, and like there's the whole thing where he, like, he tries and like he fixes his car because he wants to help Ishmael escape, because he wants escape his bars. And that's kind of like what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to escape like these wheels of, you want to call it capitalism, samsara, whatever. um but it's like, what, yes, to escape, and what's in front of us, like what's the thing, like how can we actually put what we're learning into action, how can we mindfully observe versus like having this ideal of like, I need to rescue him and like, put him in my car and all those things. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting because this was the second time I read the book, and I didn't catch that the first time, so it really was like, oh my goodness.
I'm catching it now as you're explaining it. I didn't get it. So thank you so much, because also pneumonia is connected to the lungs. In TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, lungs is grief and sadness. So you can feel like he's grieving the state of the world and the situation that everyone is in. So I feel like, in a way, it's almost like, the Christ who's giving himself over for the love that he has for humanity. It feels like that. It's like taking on some of the pain and processing that pain and trying to still like reach people's ears, because he does say it's not the first person that he shares that message with. Like, he's had other human students, let's say. So it feels like, we're faced with a spiritual master who's really working out the karma of Earth and for the love that he has for Earth and all of us. So, okay, we got really into the deep so early on. Okay, but thank you so much for recommending this book, and I hope everyone read it because it was such a beautiful, beautiful, impactful read. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for reading it, or if you're going to read it, thank you. Yeah, I feel like this book is a really good way to free your mind. This is how I will put it. So it's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Definitely. And uh, for those who haven't read it and who might have some spoilers, basically, this man who received this lesson from a gorilla is we're being talked to as if we're the man sitting in front of Ishmael every day. And this is such a perspective shift on a lot of things that we might have experienced, or that humanity tells itself. Is totally changing the perspective of history, like our history. And that was such it gave me so much hope, and at the same time it really like slapped me in the face to see where I've also been blind and not seen things for what they could have been or what they were. So for those who want to read, please read it. Please read it to the end. Maybe you can read it in one go. That's like highly accessible and possible, I think, to read it in one go. But yeah, take time to reflect about it afterwards, because it's a really, really powerful book. And usually we read each other quotes from it in our episodes of the book club. And today, when I was like going through the notes, I had 8 pages of quotes. Like, that's how powerful, how many things resonated and hit home, and all were put in the most perfect way. Like, each sentence is so well written as well. So please, please, please read this book. Like, please read it and discuss about it with us. Please leave a comment, because yeah, we need a discussion around it. Is there anything that you want to share about it?
Me, it's like the best book I've ever read. I don't know. I kind of want to get into the quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Let me pull it up. And then there's also like follow-up books. I think he wrote My Ishmael, which is the second one, and I think the third one is called The Story of B. I've never read the other two. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure they're just as good. I have also a lot of pages.
That's a good sign. That's a really, really good sign.
And the way that I marked it is like mine has the dates of when I marked it. So then there's like some from when I first read it in 2022, and then some when I read it the second time in 2024.
That's
Okay.
amazing. Oh, so cool.
Should I start first?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So one of the big ones for me in this book is this concept of our culture. And he talks a lot about the culture in this book, but one of the things he points out is actually us living in this world. We subscribe to a culture. Like, we think that we're very different, like I living in Canada could be vastly different from someone else. Like in culture, even me, like moving from Singapore to Canada, just experiencing different cultures. I'm like, oh yeah, those are like different cultures. And at the same time, there's this one culture that all of us in the world subscribe to. And it's very subtle. It didn't actually hit me until I read this book. So for the purposes of the book, this book club, he calls it mother culture. And what he says about mother culture is that once you learn to discern the voice of mother culture humming in the background, telling her story over and over again to the people of your culture, you'll never stop being conscious of it. Wherever you go for the rest of your life, you'll be tempted to say to the people around you, how can you listen to this stuff and not recognize it for what it is? And this like quote of mother culture, this is actually in chapter 2, so like quite early on in the book, this thing about mother culture. um when I read this book the first time, I was like, yeah, I get it, like we're all trapped in this mother culture thing. And then when I read it again for the second time, this is when I was going through like really hard times. I will say it actually made me more depressed, because the second time around, instead of being like, yeah, like now I know how to free my mind, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is the extent of how much I'm trapped in this space, in this, like mindset. So that was a very big one for me. Yeah.
It's valuable to see that this human culture, let's say, has totally changed our relationship with the world around us as well. And when you care for animals, or you're connected with trees, and you see beyond what you just think it is, what we've been told it is, but you actually see and listen to voices and witness energy and shifts and wisdom coming from them, it's very powerful to see that we think we know, but we don't. Like we're so sure of ourselves and so certain, and we keep on destroying the world, but we don't know anything, and we're really just falling, like he said. And yeah, this book is definitely super helpful, but it also made me depressed, just like you mentioned. And it's not an it's a necessary talk. Like it's important to have those conversations. It's important to read this book, but it's not an easy one. And that's why we're together in it. And we can talk about it, and anyone that needs support or an exchange with it, like we're here for that in the comments again. But yeah, I hope we had solutions. I really hope we had that. Um, yeah, I don't have more to share. But yeah, I do hope that we do something about it, and that we treat the pneumonia and not the inside, instead of trying to break down the bars and escape like some rich, the billionaires will do at one point with their spaceship. But no, can we fix and heal our hearts and heal our lungs, maybe, and our emotional wounds? Yeah. Big breath. Is there like you read it in 2022, and you mentioned it in the year in books that we filmed together a few years ago now. And now that you've reread it and you've understand other things, do you think you're gonna reread this book one day in your lifetime?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna reread it again for sure, because the second read was a lot different from the first read. And I think it's one of those books that where I'm at in my life, maybe what I receive from it will change. The first time was really helpful, because I think one of the active things I was really going through at that time was deculting. So like deculting my mind, from cults, especially in spiritual spaces. Those things are very subtle, but I've seen things like that like infiltrate into like new age wellness spaces. So this was in 2022 when I was going through that. This was like a really good one on like having to identify where my mind was like in a cult mindset type of thing. That was very helpful. And 2024 comes around, and I'm in a space where it's like I'm like, yeah, like I've done the deculting work, which I did it. But what I hadn't realized at that time when I was reading it back, I think March 2024, was that yes, I started to be able to identify where things were creeping in and like hooking onto my like cult mind. But how do I contribute to like the cult mind? So that was what I was going through this year. And so reading this book right now, this year, it did it did the opposite for me. So instead of like showing me this is where you're trapped, it did show me where I was trapped, but it was a very different way, I think, because it was like, you think you did the work, but actually, here you go. Like, here's more, you scratch the surface. So, yeah. And then who knows what will happen the third time? Maybe the third time it'll be like, you did it, and now you've got nothing to receive. I don't think it'll be like that the third time, but I don't know. I'll tell you when I read it.
I'm sorry that you went through this much and you did it, like you did a lot of it, I'm sure. And I hope you feel better. And yeah, it's not an easy thing, but you did it and you're helping others do it too by your presence and your art and everything that you share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What about you? Will you reread this?
Definitely. Definitely. But I also, like, I read it on my ebook reader and I would love to have a copy. So I'm going to buy myself a physical copy when I go to an English speaking country because I couldn't find it here except in Turkish. And I am not able to read a fiction in Turkish yet unless it's Harry Potter or like for kids. So, sorry. So, yes, I will. I need to buy myself a copy to have the object with me and to highlight it more and to take it in a different way than an e-reader. I think it would help. But yeah, I can't wait to reread it. But I haven't felt the need to read the sequels that are mentioned. I don't know why. But sometimes sequels, they kind of break it for me, and I don't want this to break. So I really, really cherished it. And it was one of my favorite books out of all the books we read together in this book club. So thank you so much. Like, I'm going to recommend this to a lot of people. Yeah. I'm going to tell my dogs this is the Bible. Yeah. Yeah. So let's try to like lift up and have another note, but we're coming to the end of the year. We wanted to talk about the other books that we've read. What book do you want to share right now with us? And what did you enjoy? And it doesn't have to be spiritual themed or environmental themed because that's or science themed. That's what we've been connecting with. So what did you enjoy the most this year?
I read a lot of books this year. I have to like pet myself. I had a goal on Goodreads of 50 books. I think I'm at 43 right now. So I read a lot this year. I brought a whole stack to share, but we're in a more, somber mood right now just after discussing Ishmael, so I'll do the opposite. One of the ones that I really enjoyed this year was actually the Bhagavad Gita. It's like a short book, but this book actually took me, I want to say, a year to read because I started reading this actually after we came back from band. So yeah, a year. And it does the opposite. So Ishmael kind of tells you where you're trapped and everything, but this book is about devotion. Just instead of having to be something, instead of having to like save the world and everything, what's the best way to do it? Devotion. Devotion to like the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. It just tells you the path of the heart, and it's so easy. The heart is just something that you can access at any moment, right? Just drop into it and you just feel it. You feel, like everything, just God is in everything, right? So yes, this is my counter, how do you say it? Like my counter pose. In yoga, you stretch one way, stretch the other. My counter pose to Ishmael, the Bhagavad Gita.
It's necessary to have both. But good. Okay, I've never read it. I really want to now. You made me want to read it. I always felt like it was very daunting and very big. That totally comes from Eat, Pray, Love, where she's being told she has to read it, and she's like, "Oh, I don't want to." We love Julia Roberts here, but it's her character. But yeah, cool. Okay, I want to read it. Thank you. I will.
There's a couple of so my edition is the Penguin edition, but I'll show you the other edition that I have, which could probably be why she was like, it's so thick, because this is a thick edition. Because the Penguin edition is just like, it's just the lines. There are some editions that actually they break it down line by line, which is why they get so thick. Can you see? Oh yeah.
But the breakdown is so necessary sometimes because you don't get what they're referring to. So yeah. With the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, I was like, the breakdowns were,
Yeah.
it was so good. Okay. Should I share a book I read? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna I read all of the comics about the life of Buddha by Osamu Tezuka, and there's 8 of them. And they're really hard to go through at some point. Like at the beginning, they introduced so many characters, and I just printed some pages that hit really hard. And there's a lot of war and violence, and it's not an easy collection, like series of experiences and stories, but those moments where the Buddha has his revelations, they punch me so much because they're so powerful, because you actually have been bathed in the society he lived in and all of the violence that existed. So now his message takes a lot of depth, and like it's in 3D instead of just being a 2D message. So it really felt like it was coming out. So when I read specific chapters, like I really literally just printed so many of them, they just hit home so hard, and they touched me in a way. So I really, really, really recommend those. Osamu Tezuka is the creator of Astro Boy, the very famous comic, like manga and anime. So it was very interesting to see that he also did something on the Buddha, and it was so good. Like really, really recommend it. But yeah, it's a long journey as well. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
You know what? If I could, the whole thing, but I'll share this one. Does this
And
look familiar?
share everything with us. You know, if you have a pile of books, we want to know all about it.
I have a pile of books right here.
Oh,
I'll share
beautiful.
them one. Okay, the first one. I want to know, do you like this book too?
Yes. So for others, it's a story of a friend of mine gifted me this book, and then I fell in love with it, and then I gifted it to Sarah, and it's your turn to gift it to someone else.
I did give it to someone. So I like this copy. I kept it for myself, but I did give another copy to someone. But yes, this is a treasure. This is, I don't know. I love this book so much. I read it. I think I read it at the start of summer, just when like this whole year has been a very hard year for me. Just like, you want to talk about astrological transits, I think I got hit with all of the very hard ones. But just like in general. So I read this in the summer, and it was just so, it just made me fall in love with like life again. You know, it's just about being here. Like, why are we here, you know? And I'm going to read the start, the first line of this book. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. It is strange to be here. The mystery never leaves you alone. Behind your image, below your words, above your thoughts, the silence of another world awaits. A world lives within you. No one else can bring you news of this inner world. And it was so helpful, this book. I even put the thing July 2024. It was really helpful because I was at a point, like literally, I was like, why am I here? You know, like it just felt like, I don't know, inner purification, like fire, inner fire purification. It was really hard. And this book, it's broken down into a couple of themes. So it tells you about friendship. It tells you about, you know, your senses. It tells you about solitude, which is what I was going through. I felt so alone, but like solitude is luminous. It's the name of the chapter. Um, you know, work as a poetics of growth, which was another thing I was going through. And you know, aging, the beauty of the inner harvest, and all of these things were actually like questions that I had at that point in time, and this book answered them so beautifully. And I really loved the chapter on friendship. Well, I loved all of them, but I really loved the chapter on friendship, and I really loved the last chapter, which is about death, dying. It's just a gift. Thank you.
I'm so happy that you enjoyed it and that it brought you relief in a difficult time. It it's also something that I feel like I'm going to return to, like a Bible as well, because John O'Donoghue is also a poet, and you really feel like it's purely poetry, but in prose, and it soothes something in you. So I hope that everybody gets it too, gets a copy and just read it. It feels like letters to a poet a little bit as well. It's a bigger brother giving you advice. It feels good. We need those, especially for eldest daughter who didn't get all the siblings. Or yeah. Should I share a book?
Yes.
So I already talked about it on YouTube, but I reread Autobiography of a Yogi, and we were just talking about it before we recorded. So I went and grabbed my copy, and I felt love just like holding the book. Like it's truly, like there's so much love in there. So like such a message of love. So please, like if you never watched that video or never heard about that book, I know it looks big, but there's an audiobook, and it really feels like someone's telling you a bunch of really cool stories. And it's so good. And I recommend this book. I already talked about it, so I'm going to put a link somewhere where I talked about it a little bit more, because this is like the quickest I could talk about it, but highly recommend it. It's so nice. Anything else that you want to share with us that you enjoyed?
Yes. Okay, I'll do this one. This one is called Radical Compassion by Tara Brach. So you know what I went through this year, but this was a very good one because a lot of what I was going through was very emotional, and I tried everything, like I tried talk therapy, I tried like all these different modalities, but what I experienced and what I was starting to realize was that I was not able to regulate my emotions. So actually another one that I would recommend is called the DBT. I'll actually grab it. So actually I would recommend this. I would like, it's not my favorite, but it was helpful. It's called the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Skills Workbook by Matthew McKay, Jeffrey C. Wood, and Jeffrey Brantley. This is a very good one. It was just very helpful for me to learn how to regulate my emotions. You don't have to work with a therapist to like use the book. Like you can just do it by yourself. But this was very in line with what I was working on there, which is about having compassion for yourself. And when you have compassion for yourself, what happens? You have compassion for other people. So this was a very good one. It was very practical. I do like the exercises in here a lot. And they're for me, it was very easy to remember. So like it can be out there and I'm just trying to remember it, trying to do it. So this was a very, very good one. She's also written Radical Acceptance, which I haven't read, but it is something that I am learning. Like like she didn't come up with the concept of radical acceptance, but she wrote a book on it, which I am finding helpful. So yeah.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. And she also has a lot of meditations online, and they're so helpful. She has a voice. Like,
Right.
yeah.
I get it. Do you want to share one more?
Yeah, okay. So Dolores Cannon. I want to talk about Dolores Cannon. That's a book you recommended. She has been a hypnotist, let's say. Like, can I say this? Is it hypnotist? Like she takes people through past life regressions through hypnosis, and then she did so many of those sessions for such a long time and published books around a lot of what she found. And she left this earth recently, but she was in the midst of writing a lot of books, and she also has a lot of tapes that have not been transcribed. So her team or her family, I don't know, have followed the guidance and published one of those books, and there's others coming. And this one is called Horns of the Goddess. Horns of the Goddess, yes. And it's all about the Celtic lineage and the Celtic knowledge and wisdom connected with the cult of the goddess. And it was so good. So good. because I learned a lot of beautiful things, practices that I'm doing to this day, like every day. And it was so nice. And I'm so happy that there's other books coming as well, because she published really, really groundbreaking books that are so necessary, because it's not someone giving an opinion, it's literally transcripts from past life regressions. And it's so interesting to see when you've done a few of those as well. And I really loved Words of the Goddess. They helped me take stock of what happened to a lot of people that were part of the Celtic people, but also there's a few lifetimes that happen away from those lands. And I've lost all of our teachers, and we have lost so much of their wisdom because they were persecuted and they didn't write things down. It's beautiful to see that we still have their existence somewhere, and that we can connect with what they were devoted to, and what they did to show their devotion, and how they connected to the cycles of the year and the trees. And it was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. And it's always powerful to read past life regressions, because the human experience is not very different from now, to be honest, except, we have running water and gas in the house, but there's not much that differentiate us. And it's very grounding to go through those and to see different centuries. And yeah, I really, really love this book. So, Dolores Cannon, Horns of the Goddess. What about you? Is there another book you recommend us?
I'll match the theme. Oh goodness, something dropped. I'll match the theme. Women Who Run with the Wolves. Oh my goodness. This was actually a really good one. Like, just to go hand in hand with Ishmael, I feel like, because it talks about myths, and a big part of our culture, a big part of the things that actually like seep into our minds come from the stories that we're told. And if you actually look at the myths, you will see, like, you'll start to see the myth in like newspaper, in news, in TV shows. Like, from myth comes culture. So this was a very good one. Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estés. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's a very good one. It's really, I think, it's really helpful to reclaim the myths about women, and it's also very helpful to reclaim personal power. Like, this is definitely something that I'll read again and again. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I've read this book through an audiobook a few years ago, and it was read by her, and her voice as well, just like Tara Brach. Like, her voice is super powerful, so it's really beautiful to receive that transmission. And I also want to say something else that just came when you were talking. We're so fed with the myths that Hollywood is creating, which are very limited to what we could be experiencing. Or it's always the same type of social class as well. Like, the type of representation that they're giving is so limited. And when you read her book and other books where they're talking about other countries or other myths that you knew nothing about, that culture are attached to or were attached to a few centuries ago, it's so powerful to see that there's other options. Like, we don't have to be stuck to Wonder Woman and whoever else. It doesn't have to be the badass woman who has no emotions, or the clumsy girl who falls all the time. Like, there's more. There's a wide range, and they can all be inspiring, and they don't all have to be good as well. And it was good. It was so, like, it's a really important book, and that's why it's so powerful and so successful as well. So yeah,
Good.
let's dive deep into the myths of every other country.
I'm like looking at my copy right now, and it's just, I don't know. It's just so good. Just, instead of trying to be the hero that the current culture entices us to be, sometimes it's very good. Well, not very good, but sometimes you have to be the one that like goes through the mud, that like goes deep and dark and, you know, says the things and sees the things that no one wants to see, but that's how you achieve like true liberation. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing and for talking about this book. I would like to share something totally fiction. It's not nonfiction. That's the last book I read actually, and it was so good that I haven't read anything yet, and it's been weeks now. It's The Blackbird Oracle by Deborah Harkness. It's part of the Old Souls trilogy. The first one is called The Discovery of Witches. The author had cancer, if I'm not wrong, so she didn't write anything for a long time, and it was thought that the series was finished, and their book has been published this summer, and it takes all of the characters again, but they have grown and aged and matured, and there's new things happening to them, and it's very witchy. It's a lot about learning actually from your ancestors, learning from your lineage about what your powers are, what your which lineage comes from, and it was so cozy, but at the same time there were stakes, and it felt like a whole universe where I felt it was so wonderful, Sarah. Like, please read it. It felt like you don't need to read all the books before. You could just pick number 5 and be in it, because it really felt like being wrapped in a blanket and surrounded by a family that only wants the best for you and teaches you about magic. And it was so beautiful. It was so nice. And I think I'm gonna reread it, like maybe just like right now, because it felt really, really, really good. So, The Blackbird Oracle. It was so good.
I have that one on my list. I have, I think, the series on my list. So, okay.
Enjoy. Have fun. Is there
Should I-
anything that you want to share, or anything that you maybe we can do that after, like anything that you look forward to?
Oh my god, I was gonna ask the same thing. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, for me, I have a lot. I actually really loved all the books I read this year. The next one I'll share is, I'll do fiction too. It's called The Forest of Enchantments. Okay, this doesn't block the glare. By Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. Oh my god, this was such a good book. So this book is, I won't spoil it for you, but it's basically a retelling of the Ramayana from the point of view of Sita. And I'm trying to like say it without spoiling it, but like if you know the myth of like the Ramayana, this is told from Sita's point of view, so it covers her time in like when they go into exile, and when she's taken and everything. And the ending really shocked me in a good way. So yeah, this is a really good one. I don't know how to talk about it without spoiling it, but yeah, it's a really good book. And another one I will share that like had me flipping the pages, The Square of Sevens. Oh my god, it's fiction. It's basically like Tarot Girl in the 16th century or something like that. Yeah, that was a very good one too. It was like a mystery, I guess, like a mystery novel or something like that. And I was not ready for the ending, so that one too.
Do you know the name of the author?
Yeah, I'll pull up the book.
Thank you.
So it's called The Square of Sevens by Laura Shepard Robinson.
Thank you so much. Cool. Okay. And what are you looking forward to reading in the next few weeks, few months?
It's a good question. So probably the books by Deborah Harkness. Like, when fall comes, the kinds of books I read are like, I like to do fantasy in the fall, I think. Like, it's just makes more sense because I'm at home a lot. So that. I'm also looking forward to, let me pull up my Goodreads to read list. I actually really want to read this book called The Myths of the Asanas, The Ancient Origins of Yoga. When I practiced yoga, I'm beginning to see like the myths, and it's like I guess it's a theme, a myth. Myths are my theme for the year. So the myths of the asanas. So that I am very much looking forward to. True Refuge by Tara Brach. Actually, Tantra Yoga Secrets by Mukunda Styles. So I read a copy of his translation of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali this year, and I really loved how he translated them. Like, he really made it in a way that was so, and he said like it was his intention too, like to make it poetic or to write it in the form like a poem. So that was a very good translation. So I am looking forward to this book.
Mm.
And also, this one seems fun. It's called Miranda in Retrograde by Lauren Lane. And the book description is: after getting passed over for tenure and having her life upended in the process, a physics professor decides to throw caution to the wind and live by her horoscope predictions for a year. Sounds like me, TBH.
But who's writing the horoscope? Because that changes everything.
Okay.
Is it the pattern?
Is it
No,
cosmic
I'm not
insight?
going to at all. Pattern sponsor us. That's cool. That's really cool. Oh, I want to share that I read yet another book about Mary Magdalene, as you do, by Daniel Meurois. And he's the one who wrote The Way of the Essenes with his wife, Anne Gavaudan. So this book, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, was so good because it felt like I was meeting her. And I've met her in a lot of different ways. But this time I've met her in a new way that inspired me all over again. And so I look forward. Then I read a few more books by him, by them, let's say, by the couple, because they write together. And I look forward to reading more of their books. So there's the Secret Book of Yeshua that I know you were looking for. I got them in French because they're from Quebec, if I'm not wrong. No. And I started reading the Testaments of the Three Marys, and it's already really good. So yeah, and there's others. I also read by the Spirit of the Sun. I'm translating. I don't know exactly if that's how it is in English, but it's Par l'Esprit du Soleil. It was really, really good. So much good truths. So many quote-worthy moments. They feel powerful. Like those books, they do something to your energy. It's like a healing. That's why I really enjoy reading them, even if it's repetitive, even if it's things that we've worked through or that we know. It's always good to re-expose yourself to new myths again, because then it starts to become part of your being. So yeah, it looks like I'm reading a lot of spiritual books, but they're actually like part of the healing and the recovery from society as it is today. So yeah, so are we discovering the new book that we want to read together as part of our book club?
So we've come to the end-ish, but before we let you go, we are going to talk about our next books for the next time we meet. I'll start. So Capucine just talked about this book, which she got in French, and I actually have the English copy of it, which is The Secret Life of Yeshua, but it's like spelled with a J, so Yeshua. So this book we are both going to read. It is very hard to source in English. So if you wanted to get it on Kindle or paperback, or at least where I see, like in Canada, it's actually very hard to find. So we're just going to read this book like together, Capucine and I. And if you're able to find yourself a copy, like you're welcome to join in. But the more accessible book that we will read together and talk about the next time is
The Yoga of Jesus by Yogananda. And that literally just came now when we were talking and the book was calling. So we talked about yoga a lot in our in our conversation. We also talked about Yogananda, who's the same author as this next book we're choosing. This book is very accessible on everything, every platform, or you can order it in your local bookstore, maybe. And we both haven't read it, which is very rare that we haven't read a book that we're going to talk about on book club. So I look forward to it, and I look forward to our conversation afterwards.
Yeah. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. And today is actually one day after the equinox, so we hope you're having a good equinox season and a good start to your fall season or summer if that's where you're at in the world. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
And
Do you have
enjoy
any?
the ride through the other half of the year. Make your intentions for the next 6 months. Maybe one of those is to read the books. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, please leave a comment. Share with us the books that you enjoyed, even though you didn't read, if you haven't read Ishmael, or if you don't intend on reading anything connected to Jesus, which we understand you don't have to. Tell us, what was your favorite book? What do you recommend us? And we look forward to knowing more about your tastes and your discoveries, and maybe what you look forward to as well. We will see you soon. And we have a whole playlist with all of our conversations from previous books. We've been doing this for a long time, so maybe you will enjoy any of the other books that we've read together, because there's been a lot.
All right.
Bye bye.